Longlegs is a 2024 horror thriller produced for $10 million and made a nice return of $80 million plus. But is it actually any good? Longlegs was written and directed by Osgood Perkins. It stars Micah Monroe and Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage is also a producer on this film. The film follows an FBI agent tasked with tracking down an occultist serial killer responsible for murdering multiple families through the state of Oregon without having been physically present for the crimes. What really gets me about this horror film is the use of wide, empty spaces. Nothing makes you feel alone like a wide, empty space. And in this movie, they utilized it so well. You consistently have this nagging anxiety, even when nothing is seemingly happening. It's a love-hate relationship for me, but I absolutely respect the filmmaking in that regards. The $10 million marketing budget of this film meant that this movie was destined to reach a very small number of its audience, which is not financially favorable to everyone involved, especially the producers and the distributors. So they did something genius. They utilized guerrilla marketing tactics similar to those that led to the box office success of the Blair Witch Project in 1999, which was focusing on digital content without any TV ads. The distributor, Neon, posted 11 out-of-context videos on YouTube leading to the release. This both terrified me and piqued my interest. The elusive serial killer Longlegs is played by Nicolas Cage in an unrecognizable way, which is brilliant because we all have a preconceived notion of what Nicolas Cage is like. And in this movie, if I hadn't mentioned Nicolas Cage was the villain, you would never have really known, because he has this gross, beaten up, pale face that is very haunting to observe. The budget of this film indicates that the project was purely done for artistic expression first and then profit later. And that was a great idea because the box office was $80 million on a $10 million budget. That's pretty freaking good. And with that said, here are the pros and cons of Longlegs, starting with cons. Con number 1. There are 11 jump scares, of which 7 out of the 11 were heart attack inducing. I mean it. Con number 2. Even though Nicolas Cage was brilliant, you don't get to see him a lot, which is a good and bad thing depending on who you ask. Con number 3. There are some, and I mean some, Nicolas Cageisms. The slightly over the top screaming and singing, but it's not a deal breaker whatsoever. Con number 4. The ending has a plot hole if you really think about it deeply, but on the surface it kind of makes sense, but it definitely feels like a why didn't you but fine. And now for the pros. Pro number 1. The writer and director Osgood Perkins has a fair few successful horror films under his belt, and not to mention his father Anthony Perkins was the original Norman Bates in Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock. And he himself was also cast as a young Norman Bates in Psycho 2 by Richard Franklin. So he's very familiar with the horror genre. Now here's something that sucks and is also creepy. His mother died on 9/11. She was in one of those hijacked planes that crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. This guy is surrounded by so much horror and tragedy. Now, does that explain why his entire filmography is mostly horror? Pro number 2. This film's eerie soundtrack was conceived by Elvis Perkins, the brother of the director, and I guess he also understands horror too. Pro number 3. The cinematography by Andres Arochi was absolutely beautiful and extremely haunting. All those wide angles and empty space compositions were absolutely uncomfortable. Pro number 4. A fantastic performance by Micah Monroe as an FBI agent on the spectrum. She played her dry character so well, it was sometimes hilarious in a very dark way. Pro number 5. Also a fantastic performance by Nicolas Cage, but in the sense that he did not exceed the Nicolas Cageisms and was genuinely terrifying to observe. Pro number 6. The remaining cast were absolutely fantastic in their various roles. You could tell they really enjoyed the art of acting, especially Blair Underwood and Alicia Witt. They provided some subtle but haunting performances. I rate this movie a well-deserved 8 out of 10. They really did so much with so little budget, and that's an impressive thing to do in an oversaturated horror market. I most definitely recommend this movie to anyone who is seeking a thrilling film that feels like Silence of the Lamb, because this movie draws some inspiration from that film and totally made it its own in a far more disturbing way. It's obviously not a kid's movie, and it does have a fair amount of murder-suicide situations, but it's still a fantastic watch nonetheless. Also, Osgood Perkins has a new horror movie called The Monkey coming out soon, and I am looking forward to that. It's gonna be epic. And that right there is my 2 cents. For another independent horror film that absolutely exceeds all my expectations, watch this video.